I'm David Coglan, CEO, National Residential, and this is a Creative Finance Facebook Live presentation today. Just thought I'd kind of give you a bit of background on myself for those who maybe not watched or listened in from me before. I've been in property since about 2003, obviously up until now. I personally purchased over 400 properties, so that's myself and my business partner. We bought 400 properties that we bought and owned in our own portfolio over that time. So we know what we're doing. But in addition to that, we transacted over about 3,000 property sales. So in all of that time, sold properties to investors. We run an auction, we sell at auction. I've been personally involved working with the likes of Richard and the solicitors, getting the deals over the line with our clients, with the sellers and the buyers. And so there's not much we kind of haven't come across over that time. So my company buys and sells hundreds of properties a year and kind of sell a lot of our properties through our modern auction. We put a lot of our investors with Richard, especially when you've got investors who might be going, you get what you pay for. So some investors will approach a cheap and cheerful broker on the high street, paying them peanuts, and you get monkeys. They choose the wrong lender, they don't get the mortgage. And because obviously we want to help them get the deal over the line, we'll then put them with Rich, and Rich will sort them out. And I think he's got a 100% success record of getting any of our investors who bought properties, chosen the wrong lender, wrong broker, put them to Rich, he solves the problem, and it is 100%. So that we've got a personal portfolio of 100 properties worth about 13 million, generating about 40-50 grand a month. And I'm also a lot like with Richard, this HMO market is absolutely vibrant at the moment. Even places on the Wirral, you've got like Wirral Waters, where we live, sort of going on, and there's companies that just want to take on houses with HMO houses for their contractors over the years. So it's an absolute hot market for contractors and companies who need room rentals for the staff. It's a hot market for investors, whether they're Hong Kong or London investors who want to buy properties that have been done to a good standard with all the licenses, been let to companies. So it's a real good rate of return on yield. So it's a hot market. So I'm going to be looking at my portfolio and turning as many of my properties into HMOs as I can. I've got a few now. I've got a 21-bed HMO in Connors Quay. I've got a Loughborough HMO for students. So I've got a mixture of HMOs. I've got commercial. So the offices where me and Richard are, I own that block. It's a commercial offices. So I've got commercial, residential. So in essence, just say we know what we're doing. Yeah, Richard's also a broker, but he's also a property investor, and he knows what he's doing. So what I thought we'd do, and we're going to be talking for about 45 minutes, and I'll bring Richard in at any point along the way, because obviously I think Richard's been going as long as I have. When did you start your company, Rich?
Well, I started in banking when I was 17. I started working in a bank and got qualified as in lending. I was a personal lending advisor. Mortgage, got qualified as a mortgage advisor stroke financial advisor with my diploma in financial services by the time I was 23. So in 2000, I went independent for a few 2 or 3 years with a different company, and then I set my own company up in 2000. It was year 2000, so 21 years ago. Wow. So we set up independent mortgage advice centre in Warrington, probably just before as the internet started, really. So it was you needed to get a high street presence in them days. So we'd set off. We had an independent mortgage advice centre in Warrington. So we used to them were the days where you'd be advertising in newspapers and things, yellow pages. And then it went a bit more internet based then. So we've probably got 10,000 clients over the years. Some are dormant, but we've got a lot of clients that we help on a, you know, to deal with all different types. You know, property investors, building portfolios for clients. You know, and your normal residential clients. You know, I've had clients where we've got them the first mortgage and paid it off. You know, I've seen that happen during the period. So we do. You know, we're an independent whole of market mortgage broker. We deal with, well, obviously yourselves as well. But if there's a product that we can't get there, sometimes Dave and I'll work out the strategy and get the money for the client and tailor a product to make sure that we can do the deal. So I've also built property. So I've built a few properties, and I've started getting into the HMO market as well, and I've got a portfolio of property as well. So that's a bit of background of. So effectively, I've been doing finance since I'm 46. So we've run the company since I was 26, 27 years ago.
Yeah, so there you go. So you don't get much good, experience like that, especially, I can just say that Richard's also really, really active. So during the lockdown, business has been booming. The customer service with the clients has been outstanding. And, we're still evolving, adapting to the market. And, we're there doing business, supporting clients over 20 years. So, it doesn't get much better than that. And that's why we got the confidence on, my background in property, Richard's background in property and finance. There's not much that we can't do for clients and make sure it's legitimate, robust, and it suits the property and it suits the client's circumstances. So thought what I do, guys, being a bit of an old fogey, I've got a bit of history, and I thought I'd say a brief history of Sun Creative Finance. Probably not all of the types of finance, strategies that were there, but it's most of them. And to kind of lead up to what you can do now, I'll hand over to Rich after I've gone through this, show a couple of examples. And Rich could say, what's happening right now? Because I say the mortgage market is hot, the property market's hot. There's lenders coming back in that left the market, years ago, 10 whatever years ago in the credit crunch. So, it's a good time at the minute, and you need to be right at the coalface like Richard is to know exactly what lenders are there, what lenders are doing what, and which lenders will allow what kind of things, and don't make assumptions. So I have a lot of clients who'll say to me, as a simple example, if I buy cash now at auction, I can't refinance it for 6 months and pull my money out. Or if I buy cash or whatever it is, that's not necessarily the case at all. So you just need to speak to Richard and he'll tell you which lenders will do it, declare what you're doing to the lender and come up with a strategy, and it'll be different than what you think. So don't assume anything when it comes to the mortgage market is my motto. Anyway, so brief history of creative finance. What I'd say is that over time, obviously rules have changed, but if you're going to do creative strategies, you've got to have been legit. You've got to be legit. I know there's legitimate strategies and non-legitimate strategies. And what legitimate means to me is you conform to anti-money laundering rules, AML, which is obviously, got more robust over time now. There's lenders rules. Some lenders back in the day would allow same-day refinances, others wouldn't. So you have to check with the lenders. If you're working with motivated sellers, people who've got deals, want to do deals, you can obviously do these finance strategies more easily. And for us, it's always been about whatever deal you're doing with vendors, you've got to be completely transparent with them. They know what's going on. They buy into what you're doing. And more importantly for you, that you've got the security of what you're doing. So I thought I'd go back. So in 2003 to 2008, there was all kinds of what they used to call no money down schemes. Yeah, some of them were legitimate, and just a few examples that you get. Some people would borrow deposits. So I even remember when I first started, I might have had 70 grand from a house sale. I took early redundancy from Mars in about 2005, and about 70 grand altogether. and I used that to buy properties and run out of money. So then I had deals coming out my ears back then. So I ended up. I don't know if you remember back then, we used to be able to get all kinds of credit cards, Virgin. There was MBNA, there was whatever. So I got as many credit cards as I could, and I borrowed money on them. Borrowed money on the credit cards. Bought the properties at below market value prices. Obviously, prices were going up back then in 2003-4. Refinanced later on, pulls all the money back out, and pays off all the credit cards. I've not got anything on credit cards now, but back then that was what I used. So it was refinancing and also further releases. So a lot of lenders back then, if you bought a property with Birmingham Midshires and it was a refurb, you bought it for 80. It was worth 90 as it was. You do a refurb on it, now it's worth 100. The lenders used to do further advances. So if you applied for that mortgage product back then, it was easy to get the further advances off the lender. So there was some strategies like that.
Sorry, Dave, on that point there, just so you know, at the moment, there's lenders that will remortgage up to 95% on a remortgage for even like debt consolidation. So if you've got a client where they've just done the property up, we could potentially remortgage that equity up to 95%. So it's back to that level again, 95% remortgages.
Yeah, so that's like mental for the last sort of like God knows how many years since 2008, Rich. It was like, been like 75% mostly, maybe it crept up to 85, but now you're saying it's at 95.
There's two lenders that are lending on a remortgage at 95%. We can get 90% with quite a lot of lenders, but you can actually remortgage and for debt consolidation up to 95% in the mortgage industry. So obviously you'll need a good credit score, but it can be done. In terms of buy-to-let remortgages, we can get up to 85% on a buy-to-let if the rental's there. Generally, we can get 75 to 80, easily enough. Buy-to-let HMO lending, we can get up to 85% on that with a couple of lenders that have come back into the market.
Okay, so that's interesting, Abid. So I know buying cash or doing a same-day bridge back in the day was doable. Is that, whether someone's going to buy at auction with a bridge and refinancing or anybody, sort of thinking, like, I've got a deal outside of auction buy, is there any lenders that would consider doing a same day or a quick buy cash and refinance now?
Yeah, you can. We've got obviously not all of the lenders, but you just need to know where obviously which lenders do. But we can do a day one remortgage for an SPV in a limited company and in your personal name, and we'll get you 75% of that at least day one. So if you bought something at auction for 100 grand and it's worth 200, potentially we can get 150 grand day one. So you've only paid 100 for it.
So guys, if anyone wants to, as the most straightforward, simple strategy, I say every lender probably used to do this back in the day. Companies like Mortgage Express and other lenders were giving mortgages away like confetti. It might be less now, but if you've got a deal like that and you want to bridge and get it in, if you speak to Richard and you get the agreement in principle or whatever it is, that for me is the most easiest and best strategy that you can use if you can get the bridge. And you'll have companies who'll do the bridges. I don't know who you use to do the bridges, like is it Together Finance and other companies like that, is it?
I mean, if you don't really need to, we've got normal lenders that'll let, if it's habitable, we don't need to bridge it. We'll just do a straightforward resident limit, whatever it is. We can do a remortgage with a lender. It doesn't need to be bridged.
Wow, fantastic.
The only time we'd get a bridger involved is if it's not habitable. So if it's if we need to renovate the property, then obviously we'll liaise with you and other bridgers to tailor a product, or if it's worth it. And we'll obviously what I'll do at that point is get you obviously it can be quite risky, can't it, going into a bridge because it's quite more expensive. But if we know that it's going to take 3 months to get it habitable, we've got builders that we can help you with, and we know what the overall value is, then at that point, before you go into the bridge, I'll get the out agreed prior, so you'll know that there's no risk, or the risk is reduced, and then the out will raise the money to pay the bridge off and then pay you at the other end. So we'll tailor that product and advise you before. It sounds quite complicated, but we do it every day. It's not hard. It's just making sure that you've got everything done before you enter into that, purchase that property that may need to be bridged.
So Rich, if we've got a property that is like ticks all the boxes, lovely family home, doesn't need any work doing on it, it'll satisfy every single mortgage lender out there because it looks all wonderful, and for some reason you're able to get that property for say 230 grand and it's worth 300 grand, what would you say is a good strategy for somebody to buy that and pull the money out?
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways of doing it. You can, if you've got the cash to do it, don't think if you use the cash you won't be able to get it back, because I'll turn a remortgage round in 4 weeks at the most. So you can. There's two choices. One, you either instruct us to treat it as a purchase. So, for instance, we could get a 95% mortgage on a property that you're buying at auction. So let's say if that property's 100 grand, I don't know, and you've only got 5 grand and it's at auction, we can still get you a 95% mortgage on a residential going to an auction. From an investor point of view, if you thought that you needed that, I don't know, the auction was tomorrow, and you needed to buy it cash, and you thought that it would be worth 200 grand and you got it for 150, we could do a day one remortgage. At least I'd have to check, at least get you 75%, 80% of the 150, but potentially there will be a lender that will lend on the open market value rather than what you've paid for it. As long as we've got an explanation for the lender, so it's not it's not laundering. The explanation is you've got it at a discounted price at an auction, and we can demonstrate to the lender. We'd disclose it all. We wouldn't hide anything. You need to be open and transparent. But as long as the lender knows that the reason for the enhanced value is due to the fact that you got it cheap, potentially we can get the open market value on the higher amount, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's fantastic. So guys, if there was anything to just take out of this presentation, that would be one of the most important things, because all the buyers and investors I spoke to, especially people who've got some historical knowledge of the market, assume that you can't do that, and you can. So, and I say more and more lenders are coming back in the market now. The 95% help to buy, instead of just being in new builds, is now in normal builds, and that's all going to just stoke up competition amongst lenders. The property prices are increasing 10% a year everywhere in the UK. As supply and demand's gone mad, and so just any deals that you've got, speak to Richard and he'll put you straight. Okay, so that's great.
Dave, just before we move on,
go on. Sorry, Chris, go on.
We've got a question from Anthony Enso. He's saying, are there any lenders who would not require proof of income? So he's buy-to-let landlord, he's looking to remortgage and buy more properties, but he's not got any other income than rent.
Don't worry about that. On a buy-to-let, we don't need income as such. I mean, as long as he's done a tax return, even if it's £3.50, it doesn't make that much difference. We will find a lender that will lend on the rental income. Probably best just ask him to contact me or send his details, and I'll review that. We don't charge to review anything, so we'll put him in. We will tell him exactly. I'll review his portfolio for him and tell him exactly what we can do. But he's probably has gone to a lender where they have a minimum income. There are lenders that we can place based on rental without without having any other income.
On that point, Rich, because this might have changed, but I think a year ago, if I asked you this question, the answer might have been he needs to be an experienced landlord to do that. But has that changed now?
No, there are lenders the same again. We can do a day one. We can have a buy-to-let lender that's not been an experienced landlord and buy a HMO now. So it is. So it opens up more lenders have been an experienced landlord, but we can do a purchase of a buy-to-let without having a residential and not having any experience as being a landlord.
So guys, that is absolutely gold dust knowledge, and being able to implement and execute that and look at your profile to get deals sort of out the starting blocks like that is phenomenal. That wasn't the case a few years ago. I say things change, so you need to keep up with the Joneses and speak to Rich. So if you want us reach out to Rich, just put yes or I'm interested in the comments below, and Chris will pick up with you and have a quick chat and then pass you over to Richard. All right. So guys, I'll just run through some of these. So what we used to do back in the day, and I think Richard just touched on them now. We used to think, I'm going to buy that property for 60 grand. It might be worth 80 grand. And we used to get valuations from the lenders, the surveyors in advance. So you knew what they were doing. And then you can't do this so much now, but you'd have the valuation there from Connell surveyors or something like that. And then you could decide, okay, well, I've got that valuation there, and can have it retyped with Birmingham Midshires or whatever. And I don't think you can do that now, but they're the kind of things that people used to do. So when they were buying properties, they knew what the remortgage could have been. Back in the day, there was a lot of sale and rent back things going on. That's obviously stopped in 2008. So there's people doing that. There was people buying properties for 100 grand worth 100 grand for 60 grand, and some of the tenants were paying advanced rent payments. Used to get that. There was also sub sales. So if you were exchanging contracts with person A, so if you were person B, you could exchange contracts with somebody, person A, and then rather than you complete on it, you could exchange contracts and complete with person C. Sub-sales different than in a delayed exchange, where basically it might be an instance where the person in the middle B wouldn't want the client A or the client C to know what price he's got a deal agreed with A and what type he's got a deal agreed with C. So that was what people used to use sub-sales for that reason in the past. There was like bridge deposits. We used to, companies used to do that. You can do that legitimately. If somebody's got a residential property, you can put a second charge on the residential property, provide them with the deposit, and they could then buy a property, put the deposit in, and depending on how you do it, they could then refinance it same day if you could do a same day refinance, or they could pay you, further down the line when you got a further advance or a remortgage. You could do that. You could probably do, from listening to Richard, something similar to that now. You'd obviously have to speak to Richard. It's all about declaring what you're doing to the lenders, but you can do those things. There's a lot of people now, I mentioned to Rich before, there's people who are like JVing and buying properties in SPVs where somebody's good at sourcing the properties or doing the HMO added value. So they buy source a 4-bed, convert them to a 6-bed or a 7-bed, and they obviously want to do more than one deal. They're doing several deals and they're bringing investors in to do JVs. And then I think you mentioned before, Richard, if people are doing them in SPVs, there's a way of an investor putting the deposit money in and a client raising the finance. How does that work now?
Well, if you could have obviously 2 or 3 directors, and if one of the directors was putting the deposit in, that's fine. So you could all do it together, because you might have somebody doing the building work, they might not have the cash, so you could do it that way, where it's whereby they're all applicants, but only one person might have the deposit. Just touching on your last notes there is a lender that will allow you to purchase property with a loan for the deposit. So effectively, you could have a lender whereby you might not have a deposit, but you might want to buy a house for 200 grand, and as long as it fits on affordability with the loan, this lender will allow you to borrow the money for the deposit and do the mortgage. So you're effectively getting 100% mortgage, aren't you?
Yeah, fantastic. But the key to that is choosing the right lender and being transparent straight off.
There's only one lender that does that. So
yeah. Okay, fair enough. But we won't tell you who it is until you speak to Richard. All right. So one of the things we used to have, like vendor finance, so IOUs, they're called deeds of trust or whatever. So I remember when, I don't know if you remember this, but when the mortgage market tanked in about 2008, 9 or whatever it was, most of the lenders pulled out. There was only Birmingham Midshires and the Mortgage Works left in nationwide. And they dropped their loan to values to about 65%. So there was people who wanted to sell back then. You're like, well, house is worth 100 grand, and they can only get mortgage 65. So people were coming up with all kinds of creative strategies there, where they said, look, I'll buy your property cheap and I'll owe you some money. And you could secure, if you had a bunch of other properties, you could obviously secure the vendor's interest on another property. But there was people doing that kind of things with vendor finance. I think now it's between 2008. I think obviously things changed in 2008. There was a lot more things came in about mortgage fraud, and you couldn't do the same day refinances. Mortgage Express sort of went out of business, and there was only the Mortgage Works, as I said, and Birmingham Midshires in, and they started clamping down. You couldn't do the retypes anymore. They basically specified which surveyors you had to use, so everything got really, really tight. So the kind of circumstances changed then for a few years, and obviously speaking to Richard now, they're loosening up again, but not with every lender. But basically since 2021, they've been, people could be, bridge deposits and do JVs like what Richard has just mentioned there. There's a lot, we do a lot of this, which is delayed exchange completions. Yeah. So if I've got a property, and we do them mostly where people need refurbs or need lease extensions, or they've got problems. So I had a property in London, a guy was getting made bankrupt. He was getting evicted by his lender, and he needed 50 grand straight away to stop that. Okay, so we thought, well, the property's worth about 350, something like that. He had a mortgage on it of about 200. So we thought, well, there's enough security there for us to take a risk on this. So we gave the seller 50 grand. We didn't give it to the seller, but we paid off the bankruptcy. We paid off the mortgage, the mortgage arrears, so that the lender was then fine. And the seller was then able to stay in the property with his family. And then what we did is obviously we sold it by auction to a high net worth investor in London, who was getting a mortgage on it. It was only about 50-60% mortgage on it. But when a surveyor went in there, found out that the extension at the back wasn't done to building regs. So it was just basically the vendor, he didn't tell us this, built an extension at the back of a house for a bathroom and just built it on the grass. So he hadn't done the foundations, he hadn't gone through the council building regs, he hadn't done all of that. So then, because we'd had this contract in place that gave us the time and the security, we then just got an agreement. Our builders went down, knocked down the extension, rebuilt the extension for about for 20 grand. The buyer was happy with that because he was getting an extension built for him and his wife to their criteria. So they got to choose the bathroom and this, that, and the other. The seller, they went half, so the seller paid another 10 grand towards the extension. The buyer paid 10 grand, so it didn't cost us any money. And then we got the valuer back out. We followed everything to building regs, and eventually then we sold that property for 360 grand. So when we put that 50 grand in, we got 110 grand back. So that delayed exchange allowed us to double our money. So the other option was to buy the property for like 250 grand, but the seller would have had to have moved out. We would have then experienced the risk of finding out that there was problems with the properties later down the line. It would have cost us. and we would have only made, say, 30-40 grand after spending 250, 300 grand. So the return on investment was lower if you did it in the normal way of buying, do the refurb, selling it, and the risk was higher. So we do a lot of these delayed exchanges. We do them all of the time. These are absolutely fine, and they work with motivated sellers, people who've got a bit of a problem. You've got a solution, all transparent, win-win. We do that a lot. Obviously, a lot of people use option agreements, similar to delayed exchanges, but you use them when there's less cash at risk. So if you're doing a lease, we do them in London. Somebody comes to us with a short lease. We'll take an option agreement on it for 200 grand. We'll then pay some money to get the freeholder to extend the lease a few grand. They'll come up with the premium to extend the lease, which is 30. The buyer later on can get a mortgage based on it being a fully extended lease. He'll buy it for that price, and because we got the option agreement in place, then when the money's come in, we then pay the freeholder, pay all of the legal costs, we get our money, etc. So we would use them, but we'd only use them if the cash that we're putting out is no more than 5 or 10 grand. Otherwise, we use delayed exchange contracts when we're putting 50, 100 grand out, and we make sure we got the right security and we use the right contracts for the right things. As I've mentioned, we did the same day cash and remortgage, the brokers to abide. We do a lot of JV finance. So a lot of our investors will come to us and they've got deals. They haven't got the money, and we'll do JVs with them. A guy at the minute has got a bunch of properties in London that during COVID, they were they lost the tenants. He needs to do a refurb. He's got no mortgages on these. Needs to borrow 125 grand. Can't borrow it from anywhere else, so we're giving 125 grand. We've done a deal. He gives us 160 grand back. He's happy with that. We're happy with that. We do things like that all of the time. But also, you know, we've had this before. If you know what you're doing, you can go out and you can talk to a company and they'll give you a fund, property fund, 500 grand, £1 million, and you can go out and buy properties for 100% market value with a fund like that. So they're the kind of things that we do. Don't know if anyone's got any questions on any of them as specific strategies. And if you've got any questions about them or you're thinking of doing any strategies like that, the key to it is making sure that you've got the security, you're making sure that you've got the right deal in place, that you're going to make money out of it, and you make sure that you're transparent with the clients and with the solicitors, and everybody knows what's going on. And you know, you obviously the contracts then needs that we have in place. Make sure that, for instance, if we got a delayed exchange contract, that if we get to 12 months and there's some problems, we can just extend the contract and not be forced to complete, you know, and shoot yourself in the foot. So you've got some flexibility for all scenarios that can happen in these cases. So you end up making your money and not losing money. So that's what we do. So if there's any of these strategies you want to talk to us about, if you just reach out and put a comment below, we're happy to talk to you at any point. So Rich, that's kind of me and a brief history of time and what we have been doing, what we are doing. Is obviously some of those strategies that I thought were only available in the past are now coming back to be available now. Do you want to sort of have a little chat about what you, you know, what kind of things you're doing for clients as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Chris, would you be able to get that email up? That just to show it.
This one, my man.
Yes, that's the one. I think is that 260 at the top. Yeah. So yeah, basically, this client had, I've changed it a little bit, but this client had come to us with they had 2 buy-to-lets. The one client didn't have any income. The other client it was below 25,000, but they wanted to look at raising some money to invest in the HMO market. So what we did is we if you look at the where it says the buy-to-let mortgage one. We've got there the valuation on that property was 260. They had a balance of 104. What I did is I did a buy-to-let remortgage on property 1, which released 91,000. You can see the interest rate there was 1.81 on a 2-year fixed. We got some cash back. Valuation was free on that one. The application fee 300 and a mortgage offer fee once we got the mortgage offer. If you can see there, the mortgage payment was £297.13 and the profit after mortgage costs was £902.87. So what I've shown there is that's a graph there that shows you if they applied what you took. This is an investment property, so if you applied the profit from that rent, the tenant will pay that asset off in 15 years. So that's the first one. So remember, you're not these. One of the applicants had just set up a new business, and so they don't need the money. So what I've done there is just to show you, so that we can pull 91,000 out of that one, and that goes into buy-to-let 1 there at the bottom, a bit further down, but I'll go through that in a sec. The other one was an unencumbered buy-to-let. Remember, their income was quite low, so we could, same again, we managed to get 375,000 out on that one, with a profit after mortgage costs of 1613. So if you apply that 1613, that asset is going to be repaid by the tenants in 17 years. So there, we've got an overview there. So effectively, we can raise 466,000 out of that portfolio. Now, what their intentions are is to invest that into the HMO market, which what they said was that they were looking at four to 5 bedrooms and roughly £100 a week rent. So when you break that down, but usually one of the rooms you'd convert to another bedroom. So I've worked on a 6-bedroomed property of £100 a week on a HMO, and I've worked out the deposits will be 56,250. So if you get, and we could 56,250, we can for 393,000, we could roll this out 7 times. Now, if you look at the graph on this one and you apply the profits from the rents, after year 6, the profit of 235,384. Obviously, it's just a model. It's not, that'll fluctuate. If you applied all the profits, those assets, 7 of them could be paid from the tenant's rent alone in 6 years. Now, after the 6 years, you could potentially have the lender allows you to overpay. If you apply the profit from the rent, the tenants will repay the mortgage in circa 6 years from the tenant's rent alone. This means that the whole HMO portfolio will be repaid from the rent in 6 years. The value of the HMO and purchase price will be 1,575,000. If the house prices grow at 4%, the portfolio will be repaid and the value will be circa 2,199,200. The tenants will have paid this asset off for you in the 6-year period. Then what you could do, they wanted like a 15-year plan. In 6 years, we could then raise the money on all of those 7 HMOs and we could roll that out. I mean, we use a HMO property management company. They would manage all this for you and you just pay a management fee. You could buy another 25 properties doing the same process as that. This is all paid off. This is from the 466,000. In short, the unencumbered assets after year 12 would be about 11 million, using just the tenant's rent alone. So if you can load that up, Chris, and people can have a look at it, or if anyone wants to, speak about anything that, portfolios that they've got that I'd tailor it to their specific needs. But that's a kind of example of somebody that's got a couple of buy-to-lets and just expanding that out in 12 years is not that long of a period to go from what's their asset position. Their asset position is 260 plus 500, so their asset position was 760, and we've from 466,000 investment within 12 years realistically is you're worth 11 million just from that, rolling out on the HMO market. But that gives you a kind of indication of how we'd present things and how we'd deal with your specific. Now, it may be that, you've got one buy to let that's worth 60 grand and we're going to raise money on that and, do it in not as, on that scale, but in the same respect, we'll tailor it to your position. It may be that you've only got a 10% deposit, so we'll start off and show you the way that way. But does that make sense? Has anyone got any questions on that?
Well, that's phenomenal, Richard, isn't it? So that kind of shows people, what the options are there. So when you talk to investors in the real world, so some investors get this already. They're already buying some assets like this cash. They're looking at their own portfolios, or they're looking at properties that they're buying, and they say, I've got this property in Luton, it's a 3-bed at the minute, I can pull a studs wall up and turn it into a 4-bed and sell it, or I can convert the rooms downstairs and turn it into a 6-bed. And so we're talking to people about those things all of the time, and part of it is getting the team around you that can look at those properties and say, that is a good buy, the strategy works. You look at the floor plans, that works. You speak to the broker, you get Richard on board, the finances work. You speak to the letting agents. We work with letting agents who even manage the refurbs. So we've got the builders and the agents, and they manage the refurbs to a great standard. They get them kitted out so they look like hotel rooms for cheap as chips by shopping at IKEA and all that. And then, as I said at the beginning of this, the market's hot for either single person room rents or getting companies who will come in and take those on. So if you've done a really good job on the HMO and it looks top drawer, you'll get companies taking them on for like a year, 2 years or whatever. So, the market is there for them, and you just need to get your team around you, and that's one of the things that I know I can do with, can help you with that, and Richard can help you with that. Just get the team of people around, look at the assets. I've got, as I mentioned before, I've also got about 10 properties in my portfolio anyway that I could, instead of renting them out as a family let, I could rent them out as a HMO. And some people have probably not looked at the portfolios and said, well, what can we do about that? So, that's another thing that you can do, even without spending time going out, looking for new deals. You can have a look at the portfolios that you've got now and say, right, okay, guys, what can I do with this? There's a lot of building, there's a lot of stuff going on with the economy now, with HS2, Amazon centers up and down, the infrastructure that people are doing. They're spending billions on putting the broadband in. They're going all over the country with these like 7,000, BT are recruiting 7,000 engineers for if they're going to put them in some farmland in the middle of Yorkshire, they need a HMO to live in or something like that. So there's going to be a lot of demand for these. Without getting carried away, you work with the people who do what it says on the tin, and you're buying the HMOs and they get managed right and they get let out right, and we can put you with the brokers, put you with the builders, and put you with the letting agents who manage these and get them right. So you can just sit there. If you're like a London investor, a Hong Kong investor, and you want a hands-off, nice rate of return, and pay off in 6 years, maybe you pay a few bills, it pays off in 10 years. I don't know where else you're going to get that kind of money, where you're going to get that kind of return. And you just need to look after your assets, right? It's a long-term game, 10 to 20 years in property. Hopefully you'll be sitting on a nice little nest egg. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like I say, each case can be completely different, and there'll be, we'll review that and personalize it, and you'll get an opinion and advice from not just the market, but from experience and options. And it's, as long as you understand it and know your options. A lot of the time people don't know what their options are, and that's what it's about. So like I said, we'll review anything for you. We don't charge anything to review anything, and I specialize in, we've got, it's not just myself, we've got a team of competent admin that office manager, people that just all day are doing agreement in principles, all day are processing applications, chasing mortgage offers. You can't, you know, it has to be efficient. So I'll do the reviews, and but I've got there's a good team of 7 admin behind me that will be there to pick it all up and process it, and that's the key to it. Not just there's no point sending you that email if we can't back it up. It has to be all agreed in principle. It has to be submitted, and we've got a team constantly getting mortgage offers, chasing daily, getting documents. But usually, if you do what we ask, we'll get you a mortgage offer in 2 weeks. That's usually if we don't get you a mortgage offer in 2 weeks, it'll flag up, and then that will go to the manager to see why, and you'll get another chase. We've got a software system. You'll get text messages if things are outstanding, or and you can speak to us at you'll get through to us at any hour of the day. You might not get through to an advisor, but you'll get a member of staff that answers every call, and we'll get that message through to and weekends as well. So we're always there, available for you.
Well, I know Richard gets up at 6 in the morning. He used to be able to go for the swim before they shut the swimming pools down, but he's on his phone in the morning. He's on his phone all day. And he's on his phone till about 8, 9 o'clock at night. So, and I know his team personally, when I get to the office, they're in the office before the start, and then they're in the office after they leave. So I know they work really hard, and they're there. So, and anyone who's like doing business with us both, they get the combination of me just going down and passing away. Can you give so-and-so a nudge? Generally speaking, the guys are on the money, and it's generally speaking, they're having to chase the clients who are like, oh, I've had my jab, set me back a little bit, or, they're just doing the things in life or whatever, and they chase them up. So the guys do what it says on the tin. They chase people up. They know what they're doing. They know how to get you the money. You've heard about some of the creative finance options that are available. There's tons more. Just have a chat with Richard about your deals and what you're looking for, and let's come up with a plan. Chris, is there any questions before we finish? We're nearly at 11 o'clock. We've got a couple of minutes for a couple of questions if there are any.
Yeah, so kind of probably already answered, but Jane Wong's asking, can I refinance with a commercial loan for 4 to 5 bedrooms HMO after refurbishment?
Yes, you can do, but ask her to speak to me. I don't know why. The answer is yes, but it wouldn't necessarily need to be a commercial loan. We can get we've got lenders that specialize in HMO lending, so I'd need to understand why she wanted it on a commercial loan, but the answer is yes, in short.
For sure. I suppose the key thing for everybody with questions as well is if anybody wants a free financial review from you, if they just put in the comments financial review, what I'll do is I'll connect with those people, and I'll introduce them to you, and I'll send over the normal way that we do it. So if anybody wants to benefit from that opportunity you're giving them, just put the comments below, and even if they're watching the replay, we can take care of that at any time, right?
Like I said, there's we'll spend some time with them on the phone for 5 minutes, and they'll then get something like that email, which will be tailored, for them based on their circumstances and what, from experience and from the market, what we think they should be doing. So it might sometimes clients get an email and say, oh, I didn't even think of that, but that's why they need advice, don't they? And that's what we're there for.
Fantastic.
That's good. And then question from Michael Chiddy is, what are the key risks with delayed exchange completion and options contracts? Maybe one for you, Dave.
Right. So I think the key risk with delayed exchange completions, first of all, I've just got a rule of thumb, which try to never do them with anybody who's living in the house. Yeah. So what I mean by that is, if you do a delayed exchange with somebody, you give them some money to solve the problem, and they're living there with the family, there's a chance that now the problem's gone away, you might not get them out. Okay. So I've had that, and I've overcome that. and it's maybe once bitten, twice shy. I do delayed exchange completions now with people who are selling a second spare asset that's empty, and they want the money and they want the problem gone, and they don't renege on the deal. So the first thing is you got to make sure that you know, once you solve somebody's problem with a delayed exchange, the vision of what you've got in mind of what's going to happen with that transaction will go ahead because the seller is on board. Yeah. The second thing is you just got to make sure there's money in it. Yeah. So I've been caught out with a broke even before. I didn't get a surveyor in. You know, the one, you know, that I got lucky on the one in London where I had to rebuild the extension. Yeah. Because there was money in the deal, the seller still had equity in it. I did another one where there wasn't. I ended up knocking down another extension, rebuilding that, and I come out and broke even. So because I'm, you know, I don't necessarily get surveyors to go and have a look at every property. I get my builders to do it. But this one that I come unstuck with was in Kent. My builders are in Manchester, so I took a punt. Yeah. So the other thing is just making sure that if the client's right, is there enough equity in it in case there is a problem that you experience when you go along? Don't do it if the deal's tight, because in the end you've got to sell it and make the money, or with a delayed exchange at some point you've got to either buy it or sell it, or you'll lose your money. Yeah. So the other thing that you then put into the contract is, if you know, because a lot of people say, well, okay, I've delayed exchange, got to put a term in the exchange contract of 12 months. If you get to 11 months and 24 days, and you haven't done the deal, and you're a few months away, your client that you're selling it to or whatever needs a bit more time, you need to have a clause in the contract that says you can extend the contract for as long as you want. Yeah. That in itself, you might need to do a deal with the client. You might think, I need the money, so you might need to give them a couple of grand to keep them sweet or something like that. So I think they're the key risks with an exchange contract. Make sure that the seller doesn't live there. Make sure that there's enough equity in the deal in case anything goes wrong, and then you can extend the contract in case you hit any troubles. Yeah, with an option agreement, the option agreement, again, the same principles applies to money in it, but I think there you just need to be able to register the option agreement. If you're paying somebody any money in advance, you just need to be able to register the restriction at the land registry and make sure that you follow through with your commitments that you agreed to do in the option agreement. And I don't think you can go wrong, but you never know. Seller might decide that they want to scoop your deal, but hence the restriction means you'll get paid at some point in the future if they do renege on it. So that's why we only use option agreements for low cash advance deals. So we're happy to wait for a year or two to get it back if somebody was being playing a bit of skullduggery. But generally 9.5 out of 10 go through fine. Hope that helps.
Very good. Awesome. So we're coming to the top of the hour now. So just the final thing to say, thanks for Richard for coming on, giving so much valuable information. But if anybody wants any help at all, we are here to help. So put your questions in the comments below. We're finishing the live right now, but the replay is going to be here for days and weeks to come. And we will monitor this. So if you've got any questions, pop it in the comments below. If you want to take advantage of getting a free financial review, just put the phrase financial review below. I'll pick up on that and then I'll introduce you to Richard personally. And if you want help with your properties, if you want help and actually being coached with Dave as well, we do have a private client program as well. And there's a bit of a waiting list on that at the moment. But if you're interested in that, just again, type in the comments, private clients, and we'll connect with you and have a chat with you and let you know what the next steps are.
Yeah. So just on that, a little bit more meat on the bones with that guy. There's a lot of stuff that me and Rich just covered here. People are busy. They've only got a few hours a week to spend on property. Unlike us, we live and breathe it. We work 80, 100 hours a week on property. So somebody comes to me as part of that program. I can help marshal all the experts like Richard, make sure you get the callbacks when you want, look at what you're doing and do the training, do the mentorship. And also, because we run an auction, we can help you either help you by providing deals that we source at auctions for our clients, or we can look at your deals that you're bringing forward to make sure that they're the right deals. And I'd say that people who come to me with deals, I tell them that they're overpriced, or, you know, these are the things that you need to go back and find out with valuation. So it's a proper service, yeah. So if you're really keen to build your portfolio and do it right, you know, it's a proper service. Okay.
Perfect.
All right, guys, fantastic. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. Thanks for all your fabulous knowledge, Richard. Key Mortgage Services, top mortgage broker in Chester. Don't forget to reach out. Okay.
Cheers. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Have a great day, everybody.